Howdy, this is Mackenzie Franklin from SideGame LLC here in Colorado Springs, Colorado. In this video, we're going to be doing a recap on some of the local conventions here in the Colorado Springs area. SideGame LLC's involvement, the games that we played and demoed, and just in general, the experience at the two cons and what I may have changed or may do differently next year. Now, if you haven't subscribed to the channel already, please make sure that you do. It is the best way to help us grow. And for those of you already subscribed, thank you so much for the continuous support. Let's talk about these local cons, starting off with NerdCon. So actually not NerdCon, my bad. Starting off with Gamecon. So Gamecon here is ran by a not a corporation. It's ran by I forgot the word for it. Gamecon is ran by a group of gamers here in Colorado Springs, and they run it out of different middle schools. So before it was ran through Rampart, and now it's moved over to Janitel Middle School. So Janitel Middle School is actually where I work, which is amazing. The fact that one of the organizers is the librarian, that means that they have the inn, able to get it all set up and ready to go. So this was the last weekend on Saturday, and I took the morning shift here working at Gamecon. Excellent opportunity for gamers from middle school all the way to high school, and their parents to get involved, demo games, be in a safe area, and experience a variety of new games that they've never played before. So I took this opportunity to not only go and demo some games, but also introduce myself as SideGame LLC and make sure that everybody knew that this was an entity that existed, while also making sure that they had a great time. So the main game that we ran at GameCon here was Catacombs 3rd Edition. So played this for about 4 hours of Catacombs 3rd Edition. And the reason that I chose this game is because of the engagement and the ease of teach, as well as to facilitate the quick movement and pacing of the experience. So if you're unfamiliar with Catacombs, this is a flicking dexterity dungeon crawl game. And the way the game works is you will have a map that has all of these large pillars in it. And on your turn as a hero, you're going to be flicking your character. And it's a dexterity dungeon crawl. So anything that you think would be represented in this dungeon crawl mode is actually done through pieces. So if you're going to throw a fireball, you take an actual fireball piece, put it on the board, and flick it. If you want to punch somebody, your character needs to make contact with whatever you're punching. And that's a great way to explain it. It gets people into the game, and on their turn, you have these three options. You either flick yourself as a punch or use one of these special tokens and get an ability. It's one that has very low overhead, so you can get people playing in less than a minute. Love that. And the way that we had it set up was we had 4 different characters that were all set up, and then I was controlling the enemies. And whenever I do the enemy side, I make sure to distribute the damage pretty evenly to make sure that there's no quick eliminations. Yes, it's not the most optimal playing for competitive play if you're actually trying to win and push everybody down, but for fun and experience, this is the way to do it, in my opinion. So we had 2 different sides that we're playing with a mushroom forest, and you can see we got a little speaker down there to play some music. One of my go-to things is to make sure that I have a Spotify playlist in the background. This one we had fantasy forest music in the background, so it worked perfectly for the mood setting. And then on the second side, we had a bit of a more difficult scenario with this forbidden wood. This had poison introduced as well as some more stunning. So it gave players the chance to communicate about where they were going to end, where they would land. And so if players wanted to play more than one experience in a row, I thought this was a great option for that. So starting off with more of a simple dungeon and then going on to a more difficult one after that. So I really enjoy this entire experience. The fact that you have these characters that are all unique, but have that core basic framework of you're flicking this thing to do something. It makes it for an engaging time that people can customize how they want to approach an experience. In particular, for this one, we had a ice mage who could do some freezing spells, a fire mage who had lots of these large fireballs and could summon this big old demon. You had a little squirrel that had this defensive magic shield, which also helped out with that coordination and cooperation, talking to people, figuring out who should go first, where to put these defensive pieces up. And then lastly, we had a centaur that had some ranged weapons, so giving them a bit of a different approach. So you had characters that were melee, range, different spells, different types, and being able to look at which enemies they could hit with blasts. I think that this worked really well, and it just has assured me that Catacombs is going to be a game that consistently works well in this. This also has given me some ideas about doing these large not campaign games, but these single-shot scenario experiences based off of a larger campaign system. So even things like Kingdom Death Monster or any boss battling system like Townsfolk Tussle, and just having a single scenario set up so people can get in and get fighting. Obviously, Kingdom Death Monster is probably not the best example for a convention that's geared around children, but that concept of setting up a pre-built board with items and abilities, I think it worked perfectly here for Catacombs, got kids in, played a round in 30 minutes or less, and then moved on to another activity. Kept their engagement, everybody taking lightning fast turns, and then as the GM or the enemy character, you're able to just flick haphazardly, but also with intent and intention to make sure that that the excitement is there and get people excited to get going. So I really enjoyed the time with Catacombs. This is one of my strongest recommendations for a convention game, and it has not failed me yet. So that is Catacombs, our first game that we ran over at Gamecon. Now, the second game that we ran at Gamecon was one I was a little apprehensive about running, and this is Ready, Set, Bet. Now, Ready, Set, Bet has been receiving all sorts of accolades, excitement, but when I originally got it, I was not super enthralled with it. I thought that the app was a little bit annoying as you had to focus on that app the entire game. It felt like I was glued to a screen and then casually putting out bets. Not that exciting, honestly, but the convention experience is the place to play Ready, Set, Bet, and that shined for sure here. Now, this is the first time that I had actually played it without the app, and I ran the game myself, so that way we have as many participants playing as they want. And I also think this is a perfect convention game because people can drop in and just join if there's extra space without feeling like they're super far behind. Now, if you haven't played Ready, Set, Bet, this is a horse racing game. The way it works is you're going to have this large betting table in front of you, and it's a real-time betting experience where you are going to be watching these horses move on this track in the middle. We'll roll dice that determines which horse moves. If you roll the same horse twice in a row, it gets a movement bonus, and then you're putting out these tokens in real time, trying to make those spaces before the players do to gain a certain amount of cash based on the layout and the first, second, and third placing of those horses. At the end of each round, you'll reset everything, get your payouts, as well as get some special abilities that carry over to the next round, and keep doing this until you have the most money. And as mentioned before, I liked the way people could drop in on this game. If they heard us, they would walk down the hall and be like, whoa, that sounds interesting. They were able to jump in and play, and they had a great time. I was really impressed with the entire experience, the camaraderie, the excitement of the horses, and I think that it's a big difference moving from the app to having an actual person run the game. I was able to play some theme music for this one as well. The Lone Ranger theme is perfect for this, having people excited, ready to go. It was perfect. So having these like horse neighing in the background for the downtime when we were counting out the bets, it felt like we were just in the stalls counting some money up. The race was not on, but then it immediately geared into this excitement when you put on that Lone Ranger theme. It was wonderful. And to top it all off, the gameplay itself, the franticness, watching the dice roll, it feels to me something exciting as you're watching the dice fall, because one may stop rolling and then the other one, and it adds to that excitement of this could be it. This could be the potential. It was kind of crazy. And one last thing with this one, at the second con, I actually saw somebody with some modifications to their copy of Ready, Set, Bet, where they added like names to the horses, as well as adding extra references for the special exotic bets. So that was something that I actually printed out. It's sitting over there and going to go in the box. And that's something that I think needs to be added here to clarify that little bit of confusion, because it can be pretty overwhelming when you look at this. You've never seen this before. There's all this information. Yes, like you can understand clearly, okay, these are for the horses, but getting those exotic bets is probably the most complicated thing here. So it's something to be aware of when you play Ready, Set, Bet, but I enjoyed my experience with it way more being the person running it and not actually playing. But I think that without the app, that excitement is way more prevalent as you're focused on the entire experience, that large dice tray that we used, and then the camaraderie that comes from just cheering on the horses and having people excited to actually bet on them. So it worked really well. That was Ready, Set, Bet. So those are all the games that we played over at Gamecon. But the second convention was actually put on by one of my friends' friends. So I didn't know that this was happening, and it actually ended up happening on the same day. So after this first Gamecon portion, my shift ended at about 12:30. I ran over to our second convention, and this was the CMA NerdCon 2023. Now, CMA NerdCon is put on by the Colorado Military Academy. This was their first time running a con like this. They had vendors, they had staff, they had setup for tournaments. It was pretty great, but this one had lower attendance than the other Gamecon. And I think that's because Gamecon was a bit further out, and this was their first con, so maybe they didn't have as much publicity here. But overall, I think that this was an excellent first step for a convention like this, and I'm looking forward to seeing what CMA NerdCon does in the future, and if they can partner with Gamecon to put them on separate days, because I think that more opportunities like this, more cons, is great in general. So that'd be great to see CMA NerdCon and Gamecon work in tandem to make sure that people are getting more opportunities to attend both. So looking forward to more the NerdCon in the future. But for this one, I ran more Catacombs at this one, so set that one up. It worked out perfectly as well. It's very similar to the one that we talked about. I got a lot of people immediately took out phones and would find things on Amazon. Crazy that that's a thing. So there's only like 2 left on Amazon, but there are links in the description below for any of the games that I talk about here. But the last game that I talked about, that I demoed here, was 5 Minute Marvel. And this is another perfect convention game. Not only does it have the Marvel theme, so immediately that draws people in, you put on soundtrack in the background so people are excited, like, ooh, this is Marvel. I know what this is. I understand what this theme is going to be. This is one of my favorite soundtracks. It's actually a YouTube video. It's like a compilation of Avengers suites, so all of the theme music. If you actually look for the soundtracks of the Avengers, they're like a minute long. They're really fast. So looking for a compilation like this is the way I like to present it. But the game itself is pretty chaotic while being cooperative and thoughtful and quick. I'm so surprised how good this is. The core gameplay of 5 Minute Marvel is you're trying to match these symbols. You'll have a deck of cards, reveal a top card, it'll be some type of enemy, and then have symbols on the bottom. And everybody is going to be looking in their hand, looking for these symbol cards and trying to match them up. So you'll be playing these cards in order to match the symbols, and once you have them on the table, then you're able to defeat this character and draw the next card from the deck. Now, this is where the timing and the cooperation comes into play, because you have 5 minutes to do this, and you could always just throw them from your hand onto the board, but if you do so, then you could be wasting cards, because as soon as a card is played face up on the table, it's stuck. It's there. You don't get to put it back up. Say that somebody throws 2 lightnings and a blue, and you throw a blue and a lightning down, then, oh, that sucks. You just played them. You should have communicated, and that's the choice here. Do you spend time communicating or commit what you have? You always want to be present as to what people have, and you're wanting to ask, and you want to do this in a quick manner. So you're trying to cooperate as much as possible to increase your odds, because if you run out of those cards in your deck after you draw back up to your hand size, game's over. You'll lose. You have to use your resources wisely, and I love that. But the thing that makes this one stand out and gives it that flair that I think just really makes it shine is the fact that you have these unique character decks. In addition to a core deck of central cards that have those basic symbols, you then have your deck of superpower ability cards. For example, so you're Squirrel Girl here, you have a effect, Let's Get Nuts. You have an effect that lets you defeat a mastermind by discarding cards. Awesome. You have something that you can do, so you're looking for specific icons on specific cards. But then you have an extra deck to the side of your board that you can draw from, and only you, giving you unique things in your hand. You have ways to pause the timer, ways that you can defeat cards instantly, cards with unique symbols. If you're Squirrel Girl, you're really good at sprinting and defending, so that's something that you can let the other players know. Oh, do we need these specific symbols? Let me make sure that I can draw into my deck to try to find them. And you want to go through this deck. The game encourages you to do so, because these cards are generally going to be better in your core deck of cards before you get to this large final boss. So you're encouraged to dig through both decks, you're encouraged to communicate, and you must do this all in a quick time frame. That 5-minute timer really does stick out. I think the entire 5-minute Marvel experience is something that you need to give a try if you like this real-time genre. The fact of the cooperation plus that pressure to perform is wonderful, but it's also casual enough where anybody can play it. Families, kids, which makes it a great demo game for a con like this. So another success here. That was 5-minute Marvel. And that's it. Those are our 3 main games that we demoed here. We did 5-minute Marvel for about 2 hours. We did Catacombs for a total of 7 hours, and then Ready, Set, Bet for about 2 hours. And I got to tell you, my voice was dead after this entire thing, but it was definitely worth it. It was a great time getting to interact with all these kiddos from Colorado Springs. Got to see some of my students there, which was great. Some of my coworkers showed up, and that was awesome. And then a lot of my friends were there too. So we had Mike and Denise and Dee Dee and Mike, Denise, Dee Dee, Jenna, everybody was being there, present, helping out. It was great. So big shout outs to all my friends that were out there helping, volunteering. And I'm not gonna pretend like this isn't self-serving. Getting SideGame LLC's name out there was awesome, and getting them introduced. Got a lot of kids that were happy to see that there was a YouTube presence for us, and they were all jazzed about just getting to play games, getting to be in there quick. And I think they enjoyed the nice touches of the theme music and just the overall energy and presentation of the style. So I try to do my best when I'm out there, and there's a reason I lose the voice, putting in that effort, and it was a great time. So hopefully everyone got a good taste of what SideGame LLC has to offer. But if you have any questions about GameCon or NerdCon or any cons in the local Springs area that you'd like SideGame LLC to come to, please let me know down in the comments below, or you can email us at sidegameco@gmail.com. Love to hear what you think and what you think about these style of cons. And if you've ever been to one of these cons, if you're to go to one of these cons, what would be a game that you would bring and you would demo? What did you think about the games that I brought, demoed, and showed off? And what sort of impression would you like to leave with children who are trying out this hobby for the first time? Curious to hear what you think. And yeah, just thinking about this and thinking about the games that I usually bring, I was really sad to not get to play some of the games that I normally bring. I really enjoy Camel Up, and so that's a great game for a convention like this. And I decided to go the Ready Set Bet route, and I'm glad I did. I thought it was a good change of pace. My back was a little hurt from hunching over and rolling the dice so much, but it was a great time. So I'm glad that I got to experience that. I think it was well worth it. And then the other one that I normally bring is, I wouldn't say normally bring, the one that I did try last year was Libertalia Winds of Galecrest, and that worked out pretty well. It was a solid experience. I don't think it was quite as engaging as some of the others because there's a lot of sitting and waiting for things to resolve. So I don't know if Libertalia Winds of Galecrest will come back, and I don't know if it's going to be long for the library, but the Camel Up for sure still is. That quick action system is just so gratifying, but overall great time. So curious to hear what you think about these games in general, things that you would recommend for the future. But thank you so much for watching SideGame Strong.